Hello Year 9. I'm going to talk to you today about GCSE Fine Art and Photography. And the reason I'm going to talk to you about both those courses in the same video is because I feel it's important for you to recognise the differences and the similarities between the two so you can make an informed choice. So for both GCSE and photography, they follow the same structure. Each of those courses require you to produce evidence towards 4 assessment objectives, and I'll talk about those in a moment. You will have to produce coursework, which is made up of 2 projects, and that is worth 60% of your overall grade, and you'll have to produce work for an exam piece, and that is worth 40% of your final grade. And again, I'll talk about the exam in a moment. So both the coursework and the exam follow, as I said, the assessment objectives. So let's just talk through those. So assessment objective 1 is called develop. This is about you developing ideas by looking at other artists. So here's an example of an artist's work. This is a photographer, okay, and you would be expected to research a photographer or a fine artist to find out a little bit about them, their techniques, and how they come to produce their own work, and then take some inspiration from that. So if I show you a past student's work, you can see for this piece here, this student has produced a watercolour piece, but then she's looked at an artist called Picasso. He's very different in his use of colour and his techniques, and then she's produced the same piece of work again, but in that artist's style. And you can see that the two are very different. So any work you produce that links to an artist in some way would get you marks for assessment objective 1, and that's the same for fine art and photography. When it comes to assessment objective 2, this objective is called experiment, and this is the objective that lots of students struggle with different reasons. For fine art students, it's about trying out a whole range of materials, not just sticking to pencil and biro, which may be materials that students are used to using, but extending their technical skills by looking at paints, different types of paint, looking at collage, looking at digital media, looking at sculpture. So it's about you refining your skills, but also experimenting and making mistakes. And that's a really important part of assessment objective 2, is when you make a mistake, you still hand in that work, because it's through the process of experimentation that you get to the final piece, and you get to the final result. So nothing gets wasted in both art and photography. Any work you do will get you marks towards those objectives. When it comes to photography, it's very different for assessment objective 2. You will use occasionally some traditional materials like collage. Sometimes you might be painting on top of the photographs that you take, but more often than not you'll be using a piece of software called Photo, and that's a photo editing suite that we use in school to create a variety of effects and enhance your photographs further. So if IT is maybe a weaker point for you, it's something you find difficult, or certainly the idea of learning a new piece of software is a bit daunting to you, then photography might not be the right choice for you. When it comes to assessment objective 3, this is about you recording your initial ideas. So for fine art, it's about drawing, and it's also about taking photographs for reference. And that would be the difference between fine art and photography. So for fine art, the photographs are a means to an end. They are the way that you get to the drawings and the studies from that photograph. So as you already know in Year 9, we've asked you to take photographs to do with the theme that we've given you, and that has then informed your drawings and the work you've produced from that. For photography, it's the other way around. The drawing aspect is not too important. You don't get assessed on your drawing skill in photography. If you're the kind of person who draws stick figures or very simplified drawings, that's absolutely okay when it comes to photography, because the drawing is a means to an end. The drawing is a plan, a diagram, a sketch, ready for you to take your photographs. When you take the photograph itself, that's where you will show your skill. So we'd expect you to put a lot more thought into those photographs if you were taking GCSE photography. We'd expect you to think about the clothing or the costume the person is wearing, the lighting that you use and where you place that lighting, the camera angles, and lots of other things that you can bring into those techniques that you're working with when you're taking photographs. For GCSE Fine Art, it's the drawing part that we'd expect to see a lot more from you. We'd expect to see tone and detail, shape and form, using those formal elements successfully to create a good drawing. Now, we don't expect you to be at this standard at the start of year 10. We'd expect you to be at about a grade 3 or 4 in year 9 if you wish to take GCSE Fine Art. When it comes to assessment objective 4, this is the final outcome, and that might be in fine art a 2D piece, so a drawing or painting or collage, or even digital media, or it might be a 3D piece. It might be a piece of clay work or sculpture made from other materials. That final piece takes you a lot longer to produce, so a bit like the painting behind me here, that took many hours to get to that stage. And we'd expect you, for assessment objective 4, to be spending many hours to get to that final outcome. For GCSE photography, you're looking at the photographs themselves and how you've enhanced those photos. And it's really about, at that point, selecting the best photos or thinking about how you're going to develop those further, how you're going to improve upon that original photograph and make it even better. Also, for assessment objective 4, you're looking at presentation. So for GCSE Fine Art, we'd expect you to present your work in a sketchbook or on boards, and you would cut out your work and you would show the journey, and that's really important. How did you get from those initial photographs and drawings to the final piece? How did you get there? And that story or that journey should show that through your presentation. For GCSE photography, you present your work on a PowerPoint, and it's exactly the same. You show the journey that you've been through to get to those final photographs. So how did you get there? What artists did you look at? What techniques did you use for the editing software? How did you get to that final piece? So those are the 4 assessment objectives. And as I said, each one of those is worth 25% towards your final marks for that project. When you get to the exam, you get 12 weeks before you actually sit the 10-hour exam. So I know 10 hours sounds a bit daunting, but that's over 2 days. You still get your breaks, you still get lunch, but you're in a classroom for that length of time because it takes that length of time to produce a reasonable outcome from all the work that you've done before. The good thing is, when you get to that 10-hour exam, as I've already said, you've had 12 weeks to prepare. And you take that 12 weeks of work into the exam with you. You don't have to remember anything, there's no revision involved, because you've already tried out and tested all your ideas first. So you know exactly what you're doing when you walk into that 10-hour exam. And that's what makes it a very nice exam and a rewarding experience at the end of it. You still can't talk in that exam, you still can't listen to music. It's the same as any exam conditions in any of the subjects. But hopefully, because you enjoy art or you enjoy photography, you would enjoy that process too. There's very little in the way of annotation or writing involved in GCSE art and photography. There is some expectation for you to explain your ideas, but again, we wouldn't expect you to write lots and lots. That being said, there is a lot of homework involved when it comes to GCSE art and photography. So although the 12 weeks of preparation might sound really good for you, and that might be a reason for you to choose GCSE art and photography, although the idea of not having to write much in art and photography might appeal to you, it is really important that you take notice of the fact that you will need to do a lot of extra work beyond the classroom. You will not have enough time to produce all the work involved for those courses in the classroom time that's given to you. So if homework is an issue for you now, think very carefully about whether to choose fine art or photography at GCSE, as you might find it difficult. If, however, you enjoy a creative subject that's a bit different from other academic subjects, that is good for mental health, it's good for you to do something that's away from a screen, or is different to having to write or calculate out lots of things, then art and photography might be a good choice for you. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or Mrs. Taylor, and we'll be happy to talk you through any questions that you would have about those two courses. Thank you.